Freljord Aphelios is one of the strongest comps in the game, but also one of the hardest to play. And in this video, I'll teach you how to master this comp by going over the build, which items to make and which augments, legends, and portals to take, how to play the early, mid, and late game, and then I'll go over some in-depth positioning examples. The build is very flexible as there are a ton of different variations that we can run depending on what we hit. We only have 4 core units for the comp: Aphelios to be our main carry, Sejuani who is our main tank, Urgot to be our secondary carry, and the 4th unit is either Ashe or Lysandra for true Freljord, which shreds armor for both Aphelios and Urgot. A common level 8 board is this, where we add in Akshan for 4 Deadeye, and we add in Sion and Shen for more frontline. And another common variation is this, where we add in Ryze, Taric, and Akshan. This will be stronger or weaker depending on the portal you're in, as it impacts Ryze's spell. The 3rd common variation is this, where you're adding in Heimer and Sion for more frontline and utility. Generally speaking, look to add in a mix of Akshan, Shen, Sion, Taric, Jarvan, Heimer, Senna, and Ryze to round out the comp. There are more variations that also work, especially if you get some specific augments, and we'll get into that later in the video, in addition to covering when you should run each one. But if all this info was a little confusing, then just stick to this variation until you get more comfortable with the comp. Aphelios is our main carry, so we prioritize making items for him first. He has one core item, and that is Rageblade. To understand why, let's quickly take a look at his spell. He deals damage, and then his auto attacks become stronger for 7 seconds. By equipping Rageblade, he will be able to auto attack more often within that 7-second window, resulting in more damage. The 2nd and 3rd items want to be damage items. These can be Deathblade, Giant Slayer, Guardbreaker, Hurricane, Infinity Edge, or Last Whisper. The best one by far is Deathblade, so I would always try to make this one if possible. Also note that if you are running Freljord, you don't want to make Last Whisper, as you already get armor shred from that trait. After you made Aphelios items, you want to make either tank items for Sejuani or items for Urgot. Sejuani wants standard tank items, but the ones that scale with HP are definitely better, like Sunfire, Stoneplate, Warmogs, Redemption, and Protector's Vow. Urgot's best item is Titan's Resolve. This is fantastic as he scales very well with both AD and AP, in addition to loving the extra resistances. He also wants one healing item, which is either Hodge or BT, and the 3rd item can be either Titans, i.e. Guardbreaker, Edge Knight, or Giant Slayer. If you get a spatula, you're not excited as there are no good options you can make, so most of the time if you get one, it will just be a dead component, or you will turn it into a Tactician's Crown. With this comp, we want to get to level 8 so we can reliably 2-star all our forecasts. And that's not something you can do every game, so running Aesol as our legend is huge to help us get there faster. If not, running Pengu as your legend also works, as the extra healing will help us reach level 8 reliably as well. Orin is also a solid option, as a lot of his items are great on both Urgot or Sejuani. The best portals for this comp are Magnus Omegnum, Nox Krea, Yorick's Graveyard, Yumi's Zoom Zone, Hearthhome, Petricide Forest, and Stillwater Hold. And the best non-legend augments for this comp are Freljord Heart, Suppressing Fire, You Have My Sword, Glacial Breeze, A Cut Above, Deadeye Heart or Crest, Medium and Shopping, You Have My Bow, Stellacorn's Blessing, Tons of Stats, Know Your Enemy, and Gifts from the Fallen. I mentioned a lot of augments there, and the best ones out of those are You Have My Sword, Glacial Breeze, A Cut Above, Medium and Shopping, Tons of Stats, and Know Your Enemy. If all that info was a lot to take in, then check out the cheat sheet for this comp. It's available for patrons and YouTube members. Here is the Corki cheat sheet from a previous set, so you know what to expect for the Freljord Aphelios cheat sheet that is available right now. The best early game boards for this comp is to have Jhin as your item carrier for Aphelios, and the best early game board for Jhin is 3 Ionia with Deadeyes. Some other openers that also work are Samir with any frontline, or Tristana with Gunners. And once we have found our comp, we need to make items. One thing to note is that if you slam Deathblade, you will limit your other options, but if you make Rageblade or other items like Giant Slayer or Guardbreaker, you will still be able to pivot into other comps like Zeri or AP comps like Lux. From here, you can still play the early game however you want in terms of streaking, and if you want to learn more about how to play the early game, then check out my guide where I go in depth on that subject. And after the Krugs round, you should have more direction towards a comp, and the general requirements to play Aphelios is to have one component for Rageblade and one other damage item already made. Additionally, we really want to have Freljord or Deadeye active on stage 3-1, as we want to get specific augments for those traits on stage 3-2. If you're weak in the mid game, you can roll out either level 6 or 7 to stabilize. If you roll level 6, this should be done on stage 3-2. The ideal scenario is to stabilize off of Akshan or stabilize off of Jhin with Ionia. If you decide to roll level 7, you will look to go level 7 on either stage 3-5 or 4-1, whichever it is depends on how much HP and gold you have. You will look to stabilize Aphelios 1-star with some variation of this board. Remember that we only have 3 core units for the comp, so pick up most tanks you can 2-star, even if they aren't typically included in late game Aphelios boards. Once you get to stage 4-1, the late game begins. Here you will need to assess the situation to check if you can go for a fast 8 or if you have to roll level 7. This board gets a large power spike at level 8, since we get higher chances of 2-starring all our forecasts, but most of the time you will have to roll level 7. When rolling at level 7, it's very similar to rolling on stage 3-5. You want to end up with some variation of this board. But note again that you can drop most units shown here for others. You can easily drop Jhin and Akshan for more frontline, and vice versa. And don't be scared of sitting on 3 Deadeye in some cases, as you don't want to give up all your frontline for some extra damage. Once you hit level 8, your final board will look something like this. Like I mentioned earlier, look to add in a mix of Akshan, Shen, Sion, Taric, Jarvan, Heimer, Senna, and Ryze to round out the comp. In other words, if you 2-star any of these, they should go onto your board. If you get +1 Deadeye, you should always play 4, as it always makes a ton of sense to play Urgot, Aphelios, and Ashe on our board. And there are a ton of other synergies you can flex into your board as well if you get +1 of them. But avoid 4 Bruisers, Sorcerers, and Ionia, as the extra units you have to add in won't help you much. General positioning with this comp looks like this. Here we have our backline split up so they don't take much splash damage, and avoid CC from units like Jarvan. Akshan wants to be on the opposite side of the enemy carries to hopefully snipe them. Sion wants to be on the same side as the enemy carries so he can dash towards them. Now moving on to some in-depth examples. Against the first guy, the big threat is Katarina and Darius. Aphelios is positioned to focus down the Darius first, our Sion is positioned in front of the Darius so he doesn't get a reset with his spell, Lissandra is positioned to ult and CC the Katarina, and against the second guy, the big threat is Kai'Sa. Lissandra is positioned to hopefully CC the enemy Yasuo, Aphelios is also on the same side as the Yasuo to focus him after the Rek'Sai, make sure Urgot is not focusing the Baron, and have Akshan focus the Vel'Koz instead of the Malzahar. Against the third guy, the big threat is Karma and Ahri. Akshan is positioned so he will ult either Ahri or Karma first, then move on to the other one he didn't take down, and Sion is positioned to ult down to the Karma. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If you want cheat sheets for any of my comp guides, they're available for you to members and patrons, and the links to join those are down in the description. And if you want to get better at TFT, join the Discord. We got over 9,000 other players there who are hungry to climb. And if you want to get coached by me, the information is over on the Discord server as well. So take care and see you in the next video.